Hello and welcome back to the Edge of the Box podcast, a podcast by WhoScored.com in association with Oddschecker. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined by Jonathan Wilson and George Elek to preview this week's staggered Premier League action. Of course, there's 5 games this weekend and then those teams go on a winter break, and then there's 5 games afterwards by the teams that haven't played. We're going to start this week by previewing Manchester United versus Tottenham. Probably the most exciting game this weekend, Jonathan, and the added bonus of probably a couple of new signings to see. Tottenham have been busy and Timo Werner has joined. How do you see that signing?
I think I'm quite keen on it because I know a lot of people are sceptical, but I sort of always had the sense at Chelsea that he was playing quite well and was, to begin with, totally luckless and then lost confidence in himself. So I think he hit the woodwork 7 times, had countless goals ruled out for tight offsides. His energy was good. His movement was pretty good. I'm not entirely certain that Chelsea ever used him in the right way. So I don't know if you remember, there was a game they played away against Zenit where they basically played a 4-4-2 with Lukaku as the centre forward and Werner playing off him. And for both of them, that was, I think, their best game in that spell. And you sort of think, well, okay, that's what happens when you use them in the way that they like to be used.
Yeah.
Now, I suspect at Tottenham, he's not going to play in a 4-4-2. Obviously, it's going to be the 4-3-3. But I think the way they play, his movement in space, even if he doesn't score himself, he'll be creating opportunities for others. With Son being away, with Maddison being injured, they clearly need an extra body in. He has experienced the Premier League before, so the transition shouldn't be as difficult as it will be for some people. So to bring him in on loan seems to me to make sense. And we have seen in 2 seasons at Leipzig that when it does click for him, he can be a really good finisher. And in that sense, his career looks really weird. You know, it's single-figure scores, 28, single-figure scores, single-figure scores, single-figure scores. So if they can get him back to that sort of 28 or towards that, then I think they've got a very good player. And what he seems to need is to be confident. And I think what we've seen about Postecoglou's management is that he's very good at giving players confidence.
Yeah, I was going to say that, George. His best football probably came under Nagelsmann, but he had good spells under Rangnick and Hasenhüttl as well at Leipzig, where he scored goals. And them having like a set way of playing doesn't feel a million miles away from what Postecoglou does. But the interesting thing for me is the way Spurs build up from the back, the way they try and play through teams and move the ball quickly. He could be ideal for that. And if he's in a front three when Son's back with Son, Brennan Johnson, and then Kulusevski kind of plays as the 10 while Maddison's out, that all feels interchangeable as well. And I feel like that will benefit him. And I think, I don't know why. Well, I do know why for some of the reasons I've just said. I just think this signing might work.
Yeah, I would worry a little bit when Son is back that when you look at that front line, yes, it all fits into how Postecoglou wants to play, but there's not a great deal of variety there. Like, I think he's a very good one to come in when Son is out because he's a forward who will press aggressively, who's obviously got the pace running behind. And I completely agree with Jonathan where when you look at the 2 clubs, like when you're a striker brought into Chelsea for big money, there is a quite clear history of those players struggling and a massive pressure that comes with that signing. And Timo Werner, clearly, in a similar way to Alvaro Morata, is a player that needs confidence and needs time and needs nurturing in order to produce. And therefore,
Chelsea players have missed chances since that. Chelsea players are still missing chances now.
Yeah, for sure.
It's happened with loads of players.
But even with Nicholas Jackson, it took 2 weeks for people to start saying this guy, including yourself, Dan, this guy's terrible. Like there just seems to be.
I stand by that.
This added weight of pressure that comes with being Chelsea's main striker that Werner clearly wasn't able to deal with it, and you could visibly see the confidence drain out of him in those first couple of months when he was wearing a Chelsea shirt. And we know that at Tottenham that isn't going to be the case. Like, he isn't going to be burdened with that pressure. He's going to be playing for a manager who is going to work aggressively on the mental side of things, because we know that Postecoglou isn't necessarily an on-the-grass coach. We know that he doesn't do a great deal of on-the-grass work with these players, but it's creating a culture and environment for them to thrive is where he seems to get the majority of his gains, and that's where Werner should do well. So, and again, if Werner doesn't produce, then I'm not really sure, unlike at Chelsea, where suddenly the daggers come out and everyone's saying it's another Chelsea flop. I think at Spurs, he'll be given the time and the environment to improve. So I like it from that sense. As I say, I do think when Son is back, on paper, when you kind of think about it in your head, a Son, Kulusevski, Johnson and Werner kind of front four sounds quite fun, but whether or not it would work on the pitch, I'm not quite as sure. But whatever Postecoglou seems to do at the moment, whether it's playing four fullbacks across a back four, it doesn't really seem to matter. It seems to work okay.
Now, he's joined a positive environment as well, Jonathan, which will help with him. I think everyone's pulling in the same direction at Tottenham, and it's low risk because they don't have to buy him. So really, at worst this season, he improves their bench, and they haven't had loads of options off the bench recently.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And it's good for him as well because he wasn't getting regular football in Germany. So he gets to come back to London. It's a change of scene and nothing else. Chance to resurrect his career. I mean, there's a little bit of pressure in that if he fails here, that's probably him done for the Premier League. I think you're then starting to the fact that he can't get in the Leipzig team now on a regular basis, you're starting to think, is he completely shot from his time at Chelsea? So there's pressure from that point of view. But I think when you get in a cycle of things going wrong, just going to a new environment tends to be a positive thing. It can't be a bad thing.
Actually, Jonathan, if you look at Leipzig, their forward options are actually incredible. So it's no wonder he can't get in the team. They've got Openda, who's been really stupendous since he's joined Leipzig, one of the best forwards out there. They've got Sesko, who I think will go on and be one of the most complete forwards in the world with everything he has to offer. And then they've kind of got that bench option in Poulsen, who's kind of ideal for that. So Werner hasn't been getting football because Leipzig have recruited pretty well over the last year or so, haven't they? So actually, going to Spurs, you're right. He'll probably get a lot more football at Spurs than he would have done at Leipzig back in the Premier League, and he'll give himself a shot of getting in the Germany Euro squad now because we know Nagelsmann likes him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the point. I'm not saying it's his fault or it's a sort of terrible damnation of his career, the fact he's not getting that Leipzig team. But on a practical level, if he wants to be in the Germany team at the Euros, he has to be playing, and so going to an environment where he can play is clearly a good thing. Have I told you about my dream about Sesko? So I got distracted when you said Sesko there. Have I told you about this?
No.
So it was like, some of your dreams like really detailed and you remember them very clearly. I was trying to track him down for some reason. But it was almost like a spy thriller or something. It was very complicated, a whole series of leads. And eventually I tracked him down. And it turned out he was an enormous turkey. Like, it's on a farm. And he was like a huge turkey. I guess it's probably before Christmas, so maybe I was thinking about turkeys. But I've never really been able to take him seriously since, because I think this is my subconscious saying, no, when Sesko moves to big fee, he will be a turkey.
Or maybe he'll go to Turkey. I mean, I'm not sure.
Who doesn't later at some point in their career?
Really not sure how to unpick that dream. It does sound a bit like a detective series as well, but I can't think of a clever name to do with you and a detective series, really. There must be something, but I can't think of one. The silence from everyone else is telling me there isn't one as well. Let's move away from Jonathan's dreams and what he does in his sleep and talk about Radu Dragusin. George, lovely pronunciation from myself there. I've heard it pronounced so many different ways this week. I'm not sure how to do it myself. But Spurs obviously needed a centre-back. He's probably not going to be first choice when everyone's fit, but what they've got there is a player that's played at a high level that can cover both Van der Ven and Romero when he's inevitably suspended for breaking someone's leg.
Yeah, I mean, they've needed... Yeah, they've needed a player to come in just for body's sake. But he looks, on the face of it, like a really good pickup. He's a player that's been compared in his career so far in playing style. He's called the Romanian Virgil van Dijk, I've seen, which in itself is quite a good comparison. Whether or not that's in any way reflected by the kind of player he is, I'm not entirely sure. I think it might be quite a lazy one. But even so, I think at age 21, you're getting a player who's played a lot of first-team football in Serie A, who's played both as centre-back and a right-back as well when needed to, which is obviously that versatility is going to help Spurs massively. And also, there's been this mini transfer saga between them and Bayern to recruit him, and the fact that they can get ahead of the German giants to do so is a very good reflection on where they are right now. So necessary, I think it feels like one of those windows where had Spurs not managed to bring in a centre-back towards the end of the window, we could have seen a really left field one come in just in terms of pure bodies. But the fact they've gone out and been able to recruit someone who's of a decent age and versatility and obviously has shown a decent aptitude so far has got to bode well.
Yeah, Ryan Nelson was getting himself ready for another late call up in the January transfer window for Spurs. He's very physical, Jonathan. He ranks highly for aerial duels. He ranks highly for tackle successes, clearances, but his pass success rate doesn't look brilliant. But then if you watch how Genoa play, they do play with that back three, but they sit pretty deep. I guess an advantage as well is I think he's played all across that back three: right centre back, and left centre back. But Spurs have got Van der Ven coming back now and Romero back as well. So actually, just as they've needed a centre back for months because they've had problems with injuries. Now, just as they signed one, Van der Ven and Romero back anyway.
Yeah, I was talking to a Romanian journalist yesterday about Dragusin, and he was saying that talented at the defensive side of the game, but a bit raw. His distribution's not great, as you say. It's not a team where you're going to get many cheap passes. You're not going to be able to sort of play easy balls in the midfield. So we'll see how that develops. But the point you make about him, I know you said it flippantly when Romero was suspended for inevitably breaking somebody's leg. He is a player who gets suspended, so having the cover is useful. And it means that they don't have to overstretch Van der Ven as he comes back. The last thing you want if you come back from a hamstring injury is to have to play 95 minutes every week. You want to sort of build it up slowly. Well, they now have the option of doing that, and we've seen how short they are in the squad for centre backs. The fact they have been basically doing the exact opposite to what Guardiola does these days and playing 4 fullbacks and no centre backs. So to have the cover is clearly useful. In fact, he's 21. He can. It doesn't matter if he's not playing regularly. Give him a couple of years, and then hopefully he'll be a regular in 2, 3, 4 years' time.
Yeah, and sticking on the theme of Spurs' defence, George, one of my favourite players in the Premier League this season. I actually called that he was going to be really good at the start of the season. Pedro Porro, probably in the top 3 of Spurs' most important players. I think if he was to be missing, they haven't got anyone in that squad who can fill the void and do what he does. He's actually the 3rd best rated right back in the Premier League, according to WhoScored ratings this season. He's behind Trent Alexander-Arnold and Kieran Trippier. But forget the stats for a second. Just watching him, such an exciting player to watch, and he's such a good footballer as well.
Yeah, that's the key, I think, is that he's someone who, playing on that right side, offers a lot going forward. But in possession, he's so good. And it feels like sometimes there might be a little bit of a creative gap, I guess, in the centre, in the kind of deep-lying midfield positions for Spurs, where, whether it's Basuma or Papsa, I know these are very good players, but they're not going to be the most creative from deep, and often that creative burden falls on Porro as in possession in a kind of a similar way to as we often see with Trent Alexander-Arnold at Liverpool, where he becomes kind of that wide playmaker from the right hand side and is very good at doing it. Also got a magnificent strike on him, as we saw in that goal against Burnley in the cup, with a brilliant goal and a great strike. So yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think he's someone who came in last season in kind of difficult circumstances and did okay. He's still got 3 goals and 3 assists last season, but we're seeing him go to a different level, and that is, I think, what's so impressive about Postecoglou, and often the case with very good head coaches, is when you see individual players improve in a short period of time under their stewardship, and that's exactly what Porro is doing now. And yeah, I agree. One of the best right backs in the league so far this season, and undoubtedly one of Spurs' unsung heroes in a great start to the season.
Yeah, and Jonathan, it wouldn't be edge of the box without talking about Andre Onana, and apparently he's set to play on Sunday and then go away and play for his country on Monday, which feels absolutely bizarre. But he's going to be missing for a period of time. I don't know much about the backup goalkeeper Bayindir, but surely, give him some minutes on Monday in the FA Cup. Let him see what it's all about. He hasn't played yet. Hasn't played a single minute at all. And Onana's going to go. I know it's not going to be critical for this game, but Bayindir is going to be really thrown into a team that are very inconsistent, that are under pressure week in, week out. Why was he signed if he's not being given the FA Cup games in the early rounds, for example?
Well, yeah, it's not like he's a kid. He's 25. It's a really, the whole situation is baffling. Like, why are Cameroon letting Onana do this? I know there's a whole issue at the World Cup when he walked out. He fell out with Rigobert, walked out because Rigobert wanted to whack it long rather than playing out from the back. Which is very much in the keeping of Cameroon and the goalkeepers. Cameroon and goalkeepers are always falling out. But so, I mean, maybe it's some sort of sop of, please come back, and you can still play that game. But there's now enormous pressure. When in both games, there's enormous pressure on Onana. If he makes a mistake against Spurs, it's going to be, his mind was on his flight to Côte d'Ivoire. If he makes a mistake against Guinea on the Monday, it's going to be, it's because he's just got off a plane. So Why is he doing that? Why are both sides allowing him to put that pressure on himself? FIFA regulations are very clear that the club have to release him. So I just don't know why Cameroon are letting him do it. But the point you make of Bayern, he was a regular Fenerbahce for 4 years. He's obviously a decent keeper. Presumably Ten Hag was involved in recruiting him. So presumably, he's capable of using his feet, which was obviously was a problem with De Gea. He's 6'6". You'd assume he's can command his box. With all these things are assumptions because we haven't actually seen him.
Yeah,
but
I couldn't pick him out in the street at the moment.
Irrespective, well, he'd be 6'6". You have a clue. Narrow it down.
Okay, in the street of tall people, I might not be able to pick him out.
Yeah, wearing the training top with AB written on that again might
that would give it away.
But irrespective of the Cup of Nations, why, when you've just brought somebody in, why would you not play him in the Carabao Cup? Why would you not give him minutes? It just doesn't make any sense at all. And by doing this, by playing Onana against Spurs, and as you say in the cup game against Wigan on Monday, you're basically saying to him, "I don't really trust you." Like, we're basically counting down the minutes till Cameroon get knocked out and Onana can come home. It's just bewildering. And I think, I've sort of done this big reversion away from stats, or sort of, that's not entirely true, but I think there's a danger when you use stats and use data that you ignore personality and people and emotion. And you look at Postecoglou and you look at how he gets everybody pulling together and how he's got people like Giovanni Lo Celso, who had seemingly been out in the cold, has had him playing well. The way he's been able to use the full depth of that squad, even players he clearly doesn't really fancy, he's managed to persuade them, you're part of the project. Let's all pull together. Let's all do this, even if you're the 25th pick out of 25. But Ten Hag seems incapable of doing that. And I know they've got the window break after the Spurs game, but the last game of the month, when Bayern has to play, the pressure on him then, because the first mistake is going to be, he's obviously not worth it. Why was he ever brought in? So I find the whole thing mystifying.
I bet you, you probably wouldn't take this bet, so I'm not betting you, but in the next 2 games, one of them will make a mistake. And then everyone will be talking about this situation. It's inevitable, isn't it?
It's inevitable Manchester United goalkeepers make mistakes. That's just what's happened for the last 2 years. Yeah. But yes, it'll have a different cast this time, yeah.
But before we get onto our predictions, I'm going to remind George to stay off mute, get himself off mute before we go here. There he is. He would have still been on there. How many Manchester United players do you think make the combined 11, George?
3.
3, Jonathan?
Well, Bruno Fernandes is always in there. So there's one. I'm saying at least one. Onana's always weirdly overrated, although I guess Vicario's played well enough that's not, maybe won't count.
And we do know that Onana is the best goalkeeper in the league, according to Who Scored. We did a podcast on it. I don't know if you were on that one.
That was a couple of weeks ago, though, wasn't it? So I think some change.
Maguire maybe gets in.
Is he unavailable this weekend? Is he?
Oh, is he? I don't know.
Yeah, he might be unavailable.
I'm going to say 3. What did George say?
George said 3.
I was going to say 3. I'll say
it.
I'll say 3.
Oh, both wrong. It's 4. And you are led you down the path there. Anyone want to have a guess at who the 4 players are? I'll give you 2 guesses each.
Bruno Fernandes.
Yeah. Bruno Fernandes is in yet.
Is it Højlund just because Tottenham don't have a sort of orthodox centre forward? No.
Nope.
Must be someone. It must be defender.
Varane?
No.
Hasn't played enough, is he? God.
Onana?
Nope.
McTominay?
Yep. A defender and a forward.
Dalot?
Yep. And this next one's incredible.
Anthony?
Incredible. No, it's not that incredible.
Rashford?
Yeah, Rashford's in. It's I've got to say, this 11, I don't think you'd be scoring much goals with this front 2 at the moment. It's Vicario in goal, Porro, Romero, Van der Ven and Dalot. We've then got Kulusevski, Fernandes, McTominay and Brennan Johnson as a midfield 4. And the front 2 is Richarlison and Rashford. And the top scorer in that team,
Well, both banging form, aren't they? Richarlison and Rashford.
Richarlison's been scoring in
Rashford back with a bang in the cup.
Still, though, I'm not
Took
sure
Wigan apart. The mighty Wigan.
There isn't a single player in that. Well, actually, that's a complete lie. What I was right. So there's only 3 players that have got an average rating above 7 in that 11. So it's a pretty low ranking team there, I would say. So yeah, not sure about that one. Who scored? It's arguably the worst 11 I've seen us do in these combined 11. I would say. Yeah, I mean,
does that say
down there?
Does that say something about the Tottenham's lack of availability up front? Is that the issue?
Well, I guess Son would be in there, wouldn't they?
And Sarr and Basuma, I guess, are both unavailable.
Yeah,
because of the combinations. Well, injury / combinations.
Had to be McTominay, I would say.
Yeah,
maybe that's something to do with absentees have maybe played a part in this 11 as an excuse. We'll provide an excuse on this occasion. Let's do our score predictions then. George, I'll come to you first.
I've got this as 1-0 Spurs.
1-0?
Yeah.
I'm shocked by that prediction.
I know.
You've literally just said that team can't score goals, and then you're confused that it's 1-0.
But I don't think anyone can defend either, so... that could
Spurs' defensive record, if you take out the Brighton game, is still pretty good. I know the narrative is Postecoglou's chaos and they haven't got any defenders, but they don't concede that many goals.
No, that's true. I just think I think this one will be a very open game. I've got the feeling.
Oh, what's your prediction then?
My prediction, I've gone for 3-2 to Tottenham.
Wow.
I just think this game Tottenham, I think, are better than Manchester United. Obviously, the league table would dictate that. But I also think the way Tottenham play, Manchester United are always better when they're in transition. So I just think there'll be goals in this game. That was my thinking behind it. Jonathan?
1-1.
1-1. Wow. Okay. Not goals then, like I predicted. Did anyone ever have that video, goals, the first season of the Premier League? There was a video out called Goals. My best mate used to watch it on repeat.
What was on it?
Just goals from the first Premier League season.
I remember 501 great goals.
Maybe
I think
might have been a long. No, I don't remember that.
It was just 501 goals in a row. It's random order, no rhyme or reason to it. Just goals.
This was just every goal from the Premier League first season. We used to watch it all the time. I believe it started with Bruyne Dean potentially.
Bruyne Dean. Then there's an early Roger Joseph goal, which is like the first goal caused by the back pass rule when John Lukic messes up Leeds v Wimbledon.
Okay, yeah, it was just a great time in my life watching that video. I might see if it's on YouTube anywhere.
We can do it now if you want, Dan. No need. We can sit down and watch the goals again if you want.
I mean,
bring it all back.
We've got the time to do that. So certainly, we're already 26 minutes, George. We're supposed to be under an hour in this podcast as well.
Did anybody have Roger Joseph in the sweepstake?
No,
I don't even know who Roger Joseph is.
It's just I think he was a defender for Wimbledon, like very average footballer.
I mean, he did play for Wimbledon. They had a lot of average footballers at that time. I'm imagining, but they were effective at what they did. Let's move on from this silly conversation that I started, my fault, and talk about Newcastle against Manchester City. Newcastle won in the cup last week, as you'll know, Jonathan. You'll remember that game, I'm sure, at Sunderland last weekend. Although you'll be trying to forget it. They've lost 5 out of the last 6 in the league. But the home record is still strong because they've won 8, only lost 2, and kept 6 clean sheets. But if you look at the Premier League form guide at the moment, they are bottom. Difficult team to kind of work out at the moment, aren't they, Newcastle?
Well, injuries, fatigue. I mean, their home record is true, but they've lost 2 of the last 3 at home, if you include the Champions League. So the Milan game. Oh, George just walked off.
Hello, George.
Oh, it's so disgusted by me pointing out that Newcastle have lost 2 of the last 3 at home. The Milan game in the 5. Right, okay. The Milan game. And did you find one?
No.
Oh, okay. Do you want a longer break to go find one?
No, it's fine. It's fine. I've got some ones I've already used, so I can just keep using those for a bit.
Oh dear. Ideal. No wonder you're getting better so fast.
That's it's like the Newcastle midfield. It's just exhausted. Like it's just
papering over cracks.
Damp and sodden and starting to disintegrate in your hand. Except it's not. They're coming back. I mean, Jonathan, I don't know how serious that injury he got against Sunderland was, but he obviously went off. But otherwise, they do have players coming back. I think Longstaff coming back is a big thing for them. So yeah, I think they're probably bottoming out, and they were clearly unfortunate. The cup tie, they'd have liked a game where they could have rested players, and obviously against Sunderland you can't rest players because of what it means. But the fact that after this game, which let's be honest is a game they were, I suppose they would have given there was such a good game last season. There was 3-3 draw last season, and they really took City on. It would have been good for them to have a proper crack. But I think it's a game where you sort of think, well, anything they get out of that's a bonus. The fact that they're still knackered and they're unlikely to get something out of it, you move on, and then they've got the week off. And I guess from their point of view, hopefully they get people back and can really go again from the beginning of February.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like they're going to be massively busy in January, does it? George Eddie Howe kind of said he's not really been told that he's got any funds to bring someone in, but there's an obvious signing out there at the moment, and he's playing for Manchester City, and I'm sure he'll sit on the bench against Newcastle for 90 minutes in Calvin Phillips. But at the moment, I believe the fee is too high, or higher than Newcastle are willing to go. But that just does feel like an obvious transfer between these two clubs, or an obvious low move, doesn't it?
Yeah, his looking at odds checker now, he's 11-10 to be at Newcastle after the window. He's as short as kind of 8-13, so basically give or take a 50% or better chance that he's a Newcastle player by the end of the window, which seems about right. But obviously it was never going to get done before this fixture, and when you've got two clubs who have the financial power of these two, I think negotiations are always going to be fairly difficult, because City probably aren't going to budge from their valuation, knowing that Newcastle have got the ability to pay fees if they want to, but similarly Newcastle aren't going to want to overpay for a player they know that City don't want or need. So,
but I'm not sure they do have the capacity to pay. I think the issue is profit and sustainability. They've got the cash, they just can't spend it to stay within profit and sustainability. That's the biggest issue Newcastle have got.
There's
a lot of frustration at the club.
You don't expect City to roll over in these negotiations.
City aren't going to do them favours, of course, because they also have profit and sustainability to think about, and they want the money in. But Newcastle clearly have the money, but that doesn't mean they're able to spend it.
Yeah, no, of course. But it just seems like if they're far apart now, it doesn't really seem like a clear and obvious reason why they'll get to where they need to be for it to happen. But maybe a loan is more likely in that sense. It's interesting with the if you consider how good a start to the season they had, and then obviously with the Champions League campaign looking like it was going very well and then kind of falling apart. Like if you look at the league table now, Newcastle are wedged in between Manchester United and Chelsea. Like they've only got 1 point more than Chelsea, and I know that Newcastle's last season probably catapulted them to an expectation level completely beyond what Eddie Howe was expecting. But at the same time, I do wonder if quite soon, and obviously there are I wouldn't be advocating this whatsoever, but if quite soon there will start to be some question marks around the long-term stability of Howe's job, because we know the ambitions of this Newcastle side. We know that having achieved Champions League football, that was always going to be a massive draw for them to be able to recruit the level of player they're going to want. But the way they're going now, they're not going to be playing European football at all next season. And when you look at the way that the trend of their results, and one of the most impressive things for me about Newcastle in the last 18 months has been that their good results have been based on very good performances. Like if you look at the expected goals and the rest of it, like they have been a top 4 side over the course of last season and the course of this season. But suddenly, and obviously, injuries have played a part in this, a huge part in this, but their XG against numbers are mad now. Like we know that Liverpool created the highest XG we've seen in the Premier League in that 4-2 win recently. But even Nottingham Forest in the 3-1 win was 3.5 expected goals created for them. You go back to the PSG game in the Champions League, where again it was over 4. Like they are conceding really high XG chances consistently in games at the moment, and that is a recipe for an absolute disaster. Like it's very, very hard to pick up points if your opposition is consistently creating good chances against you, especially at the Premier League level. So I'm a bit concerned for them, if I'm honest. Hopefully when the players come back they'll improve, but right now it does feel like their performances are miles away from where they were at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I think you've hit a valid point there. It's almost like they qualified for the Champions League maybe a year or 2 years ahead of schedule, so they've done that and they're now out of it, but they're not going to be in the Champions League next season, I don't think. And if they're not in Europe at all, it's almost then like they've gone from being ahead of schedule to being behind schedule. It's quite a bizarre situation there.
And in part because of being in the Champions League. Because of the strain that puts on your squad, because it's very hard to play Saturday or Sunday, Tuesday or Wednesday consistently for 6 weeks to start the season, and then they were dealt a tough hand by injuries. Like I don't think it's Eddie Howe's fault.
No, of course.
But at the same time,
unbelievable job.
But we look at this industry and we know that the way that the hiring and firing culture, and we know that Newcastle are probably in a position now, which they weren't when they appointed Howe, where if they did sack Eddie Howe, they'd probably be able to have a conversation with any head coach who was interested, any available head coach they wanted in world football now, which is a very different position to be in. Like we've seen in the Premier League, because of the way the Premier League's gone now, that it doesn't really matter that you're out of Europe. Like you look at Pochettino going to Chelsea. Like if you are an ambitious and rich Premier League club, being in Europe isn't really that relevant as to whether or not you can attract that caliber of manager. So, I wouldn't be confident now that Eddie Howe will be manager of Newcastle on the 1st of January 2025.
No, I'd agree with you. But, we talk about people being victims of their own success. He really would be
massively,
victim of his own success if he was to go. Jonathan,
the other thing to look at there is what happens with Dan Ashworth, the sporting director. Now he's not, as far as I understand it, in direct control of hirings and firings, but he clearly is an important voice. The impression you get is he's pretty pro Howe, but if he does go to Manchester United, and he clearly is tempted by that, and I think that again is where you see the frustration with the profit and sustainability, that maybe he hasn't had quite the blank canvas to create the club of his dreams that people thought he was going to have, and that he will have more leeway and more resources at Manchester United. If a new sporting director comes in, they could have a very, very different view of how they want the football to be played. And that's the other thing. Howe's football, when it was successful, wasn't particularly expansive or attacking, which is fine. But if you're essentially a sort of vehicle for a regime who wants to promote itself, the more fun your football, the better.
Yeah, Jonathan, you're one of the top journalists in the country. I said that
obviously.
It sounded a bit sarcastic, but I wasn't being sarcastic at all. You're a doctor as well, as we know. But if Newcastle were to sack Howe at the end of the season, let's say, where would they go? Do you think for a manager? I don't think they should sack Howe, and I'm very, very pro Eddie Howe at Newcastle. But if they were to do it hypothetically, where is this manager? I can't think who it would be.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know because I think George touched on a really interesting point earlier about to what extent do people need European football now. I think this is true of players as well. That if Newcastle don't get in the Champions League, and I don't think they're that far. I don't think they have to improve much to be back in that conversation, especially if 5 teams qualify. But if they don't, and they would need an improvement, how much does that affect the quality of play they can bring in? And I think what it actually does is it means that their budget in terms of profit and sustainability is much lower and affects the players they bring on for that reason. I actually think most players now, because of the dominance of the Premier League, would think, well, I'd rather be playing in the Premier League and the Europa League than playing in, I don't know, Ligue 1 and the Champions League.
Look at Dragusin. He could have gone to Bayern Munich and played in the Champions League.
Absolutely.
But he's choosing Spurs, no Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but that sort of proves the point. That I don't think the Champions League now has quite the draw that it would have done. So in terms of coaches, why would they not come in? But the push side is, if they're not in the Champions League and they don't have those resources, they'll be working within profit and sustainability constraints. And those, I think, are becoming a real concern for clubs. And I think whereas in the past maybe there was a slightly cavalier attitude to it of sort of, if we go slightly over, we can fix it. It doesn't really matter. But nobody wants a 10-point deduction, and nobody wants the 115 charges that City have got. There's a sort of a fear now from clubs of, hang on, like maybe this is being taken seriously. Maybe we do have to be a bit careful.
Yes,
definitely. And of course, this is one of the problems with the way the Premier League does it. That it's applied retrospectively. Whereas you look at Spain, and you have to declare your budget for the season to come, and then constraints are placed on you accordingly, which is what we've seen in Barcelona. That actually maybe is a more obvious, more straightforward, more transparent way of doing it. That at least everybody knows exactly what the parameters are. Whereas now, all the clubs are saying, profit and sustainability. Well, maybe they're just saying that to persuade other clubs, actually, we can't afford big fees, so come on, be reasonable. I just don't know. And none of us have the financial wherewithal to understand what the limits are. And even people who are forensic accountants, they don't know exactly what income clubs are going to get because they haven't received it yet. So it's a it's a really difficult situation. And so I do wonder whether managers, even their own salaries would be constrained by that. So it's not just that the Saudis can pay them an absolute fortune. It is a difficulty for them. As to where they'd look, you wonder whether they look to people doing well in the Saudi league, whether that becomes the sort of testing ground.
I mean, I love the chat. Brilliant chat, and you've come up with some really valid points, Jonathan, but you didn't answer my question.
Oh, what was the question? Sorry,
I wanted to know where do Newcastle go for this manager? I
said maybe the Saudi league.
I wanted a name. Though. I wanted a name. That was what I was looking for. George, can you give me a name? Not Carlo Ancelotti.
No.
Your old friend.
I
don't have an answer myself, actually. So
the problem is we don't even know who's making a decision, because if it's Dan Ashworth or some other young, smart sporting director, then maybe they look to an up-and-coming coach from Portugal or Greece or wherever, which is what seems to be what's been successful in Premier League. If it's some bloke with loads of cash who doesn't really understand football, it could be Jose Mourinho, which would be a load of fun. That would be great.
That would be good. I don't want Eddie Howe to get the sack, because I think he doesn't get enough credit still.
Well, what about a manager who was linked to Sunderland in the summer, Farioli, who's doing an unbelievable job at Nice? Sliding doors moment.
I mean, you wonder whether he might be in the frame for Manchester United job, given the Ineos connection. But if Southgate leaves after the Euros, that's not the worst shout. He's managed in the Northeast before.
We know he doesn't mind any Saudi influence.
No, okay, all right. It's interesting. Anyway, I've got that. I can see the angle where Ashworth goes to Manchester United and Howe goes to Manchester United, which I think would be absolutely incredible if that happened. That would be one of the most crazy things to ever happen in the Premier League. I don't think it's a bad move.
Why would it be crazy?
I don't know. It just feels crazy to me. I'd say Newcastle are better than Manchester United at the moment, and then he loses.
But they don't have the money, do they? They don't have a stadium, and they don't have the money.
No,
well, they have the money, but they don't have a way of spending the money. Sorry, that's a better way of putting it.
We've gone away completely from what we were supposed to be talking. We're supposed to be previewing football matches here, and we're going around the houses doing everything. But let's move back to the game a little bit. I will say us moving around the houses is my fault as well, and nobody else's. Dubravka, George, do Newcastle need a goalkeeper? I find him a funny one, Dubravka. I think on the surface he can look good because he makes a lot of saves, but I'm not sure he's a good goalkeeper.
Well, as I kind of mentioned, I think their issues go way beyond Dubravka at the moment, because if you're not conceding many chances, but you've got a keeper who can't save the ones that you are letting in, then that's a problem. But if you're consistently conceding big chances, then obviously Dubravka isn't as good as Pope, but realistically, you want to look at preventing those chances themselves, not when they actually get to the keeper. So, no, I mean the De Gea thing is interesting, where he's still obviously available and remains available, and I mean, I'd be interested to know what's going on behind the scenes there as to why he hasn't found a club, and if there has been conversations between, say, Newcastle and De Gea. But
got to be wages. It has to be wages.
I mean, he's not earning anything now, so
that's true. Anything's better than nothing.
Yeah, or maybe actually, I always think sometimes, do you think a player, has a bit of a sabbatical, thinks I'll take my time, and then actually thinks to themselves, do you know what? I'm rich and I can just have a great time not playing football for a bit and probably quite enjoy it. So that might be the case. But I don't think it's a pressing need personally. I think, we've seen Mikel Arteta go and make sure he's got two very good goalkeepers and the issues that's perceived to have caused. So what's wrong with having a second keeper who steps in when needed, but isn't necessarily as good as your first?
Yeah, well, Karius is still there as well, right? So they've got three pretty high profile, pretty good keepers. Bringing in a fourth would seem like just madness. And if Karius really isn't up to it, why is he still there? Why have he not ended his contract? That doesn't make any sense. So I'd be surprised.
Looks good modelling the shirts, probably.
Oh, well, pay him for that then. I mean,
got Gillespie as well. Martin Gillespie, is that the fourth goalkeeper? Newcastle. I only know this because of Football Manager. I'm pretty sure Gillespie's still at Newcastle as well. We haven't even spoke about Man City, but let's look at the combined 11, and you'll be surprised to hear that Manchester City absolutely dominated. But there is 4 Newcastle players in the team, so we're going to play the same guessing game again. Jonathan, I'm going to give you 2 guesses first for Newcastle players.
Newcastle players in. Is it a 4-3-3?
It's a 4-4-2 again, but you could easily make it a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3. I think.
Okay. Given how many shots he must have saved, and given I know Ederson's ranking was surprisingly low in the season, I'm going to say Dubravka.
Yep, you're right. That's 1-for-1 for you.
And I'm going to say
There was a clue to it earlier on in the podcast, actually. For one.
Trippier, because Walker's ranking was really low early on. So yeah, okay, I've done the first two on the team sheet. That's
you're 2 for 2, so we pass on to George for the difficult part. Now you've got to name the other two in this 11.
I've seen recently that Gordon ranks very high, so I'm going to guess Gordon.
Incorrect. Not in the team.
Ooh. Bruno?
No. Not in the team.
Oh no! I mean, in fairness, when you get first run, it's an advantage.
Yeah, I did realise I let Jonathan go first last time as well. I think.
Or would you have said Dubravka and Trippier? Really?
I'd have said Trippier. Because also,
yeah.
you get, like recency bias has to go out the window with this. Like the last few games don't matter.
Well, we've got Dan Byrne and Fabian Schär.
Okay.
It's a very. I don't think you'd have got that. I don't think I would have got that. I might have gone Dan Byrne potentially, but I don't think I'd have got.
I think Byrne would have come about 15th in my list of people I've named.
I mean, to be fair, his rating is 6.70, so it's not even a massively high rating there. We've got Dubravka in goal, back four of Trippier, Schär, Ake, and Dan Byrne. Midfield four of Bernardo Silva, Phil Foden, Rodri, and Jeremy Doku, and then a front two of Haaland and Alvarez. But I don't know if we don't know at this point of recording the podcast whether Haaland's even going to be available.
Is Doku available as well?
Doku scored at the weekend in the FA Cup.
Oh, did he? Okay, sorry.
Doku's available, but I don't know about Haaland. I don't think we know whether he's going to be available yet. I need to call him Alfie Haaland. Then I've really gone back to goals there. I was very close to doing that there. Yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously they could do with getting Haaland back as soon as possible because he's fantastic. But even if he doesn't play, you still fancy them to win, don't you? What have you guys gone for predictions? I'm just trying to track mine down. I was padding there in case you didn't notice to try and.
I've got City to win 2-0.
City to win 2-0. I've got exactly the same. City to win 2-0. George.
3-1 City.
3-1 to City. Okay, then there is 3 other Premier League games this weekend, so we'll do our predictions for them now as well. Burnley v Luton, George.
1-1 draw.
1-1 draw. Jonathan?
Also 1-1.
I've gone for 2-1 to Luton. Chelsea against Fulham, Jonathan?
2-1 to Chelsea.
I've gone 2-1 to Fulham, the biggest team in West London, George.
The biggest or the best?
The best team in West London.
2-0 Chelsea.
2-0 to Chelsea. Okay. And then the last games, obviously, we've done Newcastle City. We've done Manchester United against Tottenham. It's Everton v Villa. And you can see by what I'm wearing, I don't care what the score is in this game. Doesn't matter. One bit. Jonathan, what have you gone for?
I've got Everton to win 1-0 because Villa look absolutely knackered to me.
Second in the league, Jonathan. Come on. Knackered but winning. George?
1-0.
1-0. I've gone for 1-0 as well, in fairness. Villa, I feel like I always feel a good bet for a 1-1 away from home. Interesting then, obviously, only the 5 games, as we've said, and 5 more next weekend. We've got to do our treble, and let's do that now. So I can't remember what we were going in. I can't have a home win because I haven't picked one. So I think you taking the home win. George, was it?
Jonathan is.
Jonathan's having the home win. Jonathan, what are you going to go for?
Do I go Everton Villa or do I go Chelsea Fulham?
Do the controversial. I mean, Everton by miles.
Oh, we'll go for that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Makes sense.
Just I think. I mean, I know Everton have looked knackered recently as well, but
they're good. They're picked up.
Well,
2-1 they are at home to the Villa. It seems a huge price.
Really, that's extraordinary. Yeah. Villa's away form isn't great anyway, and I think they absolutely crawled over Christmas. So, yeah, okay, Everton to beat Villa.
Fair enough. George?
I'll do the draw Friday night football between Burnley and Luton.
Okay, and that leaves me with an away win there, and I will go for... you told me to go for Man City before we recorded, but I don't want to do that.
I didn't tell you to do anything. You said that.
Okay. I'm going to go for Spurs to beat Man U.
Yes, way better.
Yeah.
Guess who the best price is, Dan?
Bet MGM with Chris Rock. I don't know what that song was.
33-1 best price for BetMGM on Oddschecker at treble. Everton, draw in Burnley, Luton, and Tottenham away win. Shortest price out there on the Oddschecker is a 25-1, so a massive difference between those two.
That's a stonking price for those games. I always think these are good though. I always look at them and think, it's an unbelievable price there. We've done really well, and then they never come in. We even won one this season. Have we won one this season? We won one.
No, we did. We won the first one. It was quite short.
No, we haven't won it. The first time we did it was a while ago. We haven't won it. Yeah. We've had some misfortune. That's for sure. Some late goals have killed us.
It's also the stipulation of a home win and away win and a draw makes it tougher.
Yeah,
which we didn't have that first week.
Yeah,
that's true. But I can understand why that's been thrown in as a parameter.
Oh, I can. I'm just saying, in our defence.
Yeah. Okay.
And if it's 33-1, we only have to get it right twice in the season, and we made a profit.
That's true. That is true. Before we go, we'll have a quick look at the predictions table under the rubbish week. For me, I only got 6 points, and then Sam, Jonathan got you 7 points, and George got 10. So it's starting to tighten up now.
Yep.
I'm on 130. Jonathan and Sam are on 109, and George is on 102. So he's starting to tighten up now. I did have a bigger lead than that at the start of the season. I think I got 2 correct scores though, like bang on, and didn't get anything else right, but picked 2 absolutely bang on the last time. But it does feel like it was about 10 weeks ago that we did that. It was before Christmas when we last made our prediction. So yeah, I'm still top. I've been top all season, but I've got a feeling by the end of it, I'm a bit of an Arsenal. You know that graphic where they said time at the top of the table, Arsenal 274 days or whatever it was, and then Man City 14, and then they win the league. I've got a feeling there's going to be one of those things coming up for me. And I thought George wanted to say something, but actually he was just lining up a cough. He's on mute. I thought he really wanted to get desperately in and say something there. We'll go now before George dies. Thank you ever so much to George and Jonathan for joining me on the show today. And thanks to Oddschecker for continuing to sponsor our podcast. We will be back next week to preview the other 5 games. So get your post notifications on and subscribe to the channel so you know when that podcast is out. Nothing else left to say, really, other than to tell you to tell all your friends and your family about the podcast and to enjoy all the football at the weekend. See you later.